What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of HeadphonesNeil Reviews. I'm your host, as always, HeadphonesNeil, bringing you my latest set of reviews for the week. So, as a continuation of what I did last week, I thought I would continue that trend of reviewing some movies and TV shows, give an update on the current gameplay I'm working on, and then round it out with an app review. I'm going to try and keep to that kind of schedule and have a similar set of stuff every single week. But I'm still working out the whole thing with the app reviews and the gameplay. Depends on what I'm doing each week. But at the very least, I'll have what I've been doing on the podcast, or at least on the audio podcast before I started up the videos, where I would review the movies and TV shows that I've been watching on an individual level, but go back to a style that I haven't done in a while where I do a full outline list of everything that I have been doing for the week. So to start it off, I wanted to share my thoughts on the 2022 film All Quiet on the Western Front. So I finally had a chance to watch it after all the accolades and praise it got at the Oscars. And I want to say that it is very much worth all the praise that it got. So the film takes place during World War I and follows some German soldiers who were friends before the war and before they enlisted, thinking that, or they basically get caught up in the national spirit of going to war. They believe all the media and the propaganda and all of that, but come to soon learn that it is not quite what they thought. They learn about the horrors of war. They learn about loss and how hard it is to actually fight in a war, especially when the war isn't going as well as they had been told it was going, and they're continuously fighting the same battles. So when you watch the film, you get to see that progression in emotional state. So in the beginning, all of them are in good spirits, they're laughing and joking, they're not necessarily missing home, but over the course of the movie, you see that they're missing, food and their girlfriends and their old life. And then they realize that the horrors of war are very real and very difficult to deal with, especially for the one guy who, over the course of the film, ends up losing all of his friends. And when he finally gets the approval to go home because the war is over, in that little bit of time between the treaty being signed and then get the actual order going into effect, gets shot in one of the final battles. So that whole thing of, the horizon is just over the horizon, or not the horizon, but the goal of what you were trying to do is just over the horizon, and he missed it by that much. So overall, it's a very good film. The scene that actually sold it for me, amongst all the visuals and audio and all of that, was his interaction with the soldier from the French army, I think it was, who was a typographer, and then that German soldier learns he has a family and son. He shot a guy who's probably on the reverse of the same thing that he was doing. He wanted to join the war, support his country, and he's sent into battle to die for something that he may or may not understand. And so the German soldier promises him that he's going to try and go home and find that guy's wife and son, tell them what happened and all of that, but doesn't get to do so. Which reminded me of the scene, or that in the whole story in Saving Private Ryan, where everybody's curious to find out what Tom Hanks' character does back home, and they learn that he's not even military related. He's a school teacher, and at home he's just your average, regular, everyday guy. But in the army and the war, everyone is curious. Everyone wants to know about him. He's propped up, and his image is propped up. And everyone cares all about that. So it's one of those things where Matt Damon's character, Ryan, ultimately continues to honor him because of the sacrifice he made for some random guy. So Saving Private Ryan ends on a more optimistic note, but All Quiet on the Western Front presents the alternate, not so positive take on a similar situation. So it's not necessarily darker, but it does present that alternate view of, it's not always, roses and chocolate, that ultimately the guy who sets out on this mission does not succeed like Ryan was able to. So All's Quiet on the Western Front definitely deserves all the accolades that it got, so definitely worth a watch. So on that note, we'll move on to something a little bit more positive. I had a chance to watch the latest episode of The Mandalorian, season 3, episode 4, The Foundling. So this is another two-part story or two-part episode where part of it is Grogu starting his training as a Mandalorian foundling. Din is telling him he's going to have to start learning to take care of stuff on his own. So all of that training was good. One of the other guys' sons gets kidnapped, so they get a mission to go on a mission to rescue him, where Din gains prestige by rescuing that guy's son, but Bo-Katan, knowing more of the history of the clan and the Death Watch and all of that in Mandalorian culture, goes for the bigger prize to gain even more prestige, so that it seems like they're setting her up to want to have a full redemption of leading Mandalore again, which is why she didn't tell Din about the mythosaur, but she did tell the armorer so that she can make sure she does it correct, which reminds me of another film, Biker Boys, and the interaction between Lawrence Fishburne and his son, that the son wanted to start a biker gang, and Lawrence Fishburne says that he's not worthy of challenging him as the king of Cali, if memory serves. But Lawrence Fishburne says you come correct or don't come at all, something along those lines. So that's kind of what it feels like Bo-Katan is doing. She's trying to come correct with their culture and the Mandalorian culture and make sure she does everything properly so everyone follows her and not Din. But it feels like once Din finds out about that information and the whole thing with the Darksaber and potentially having to do combat with her, may come out on top, defeat Bo-Katan to show that he's worthy of wielding the Darksaber, and then fight the Mythosaur to ultimately defeat it, and something along those lines. So we'll see how all that goes, but for me it was on a positive note, because all of the training that they had in that camp reminded me of the training that we see from Knights of the Old Republic 2, the Sith Lords video game. So when we get to Duxon and we go to that Mandalorian camp, we see a similar kind of training, hand-to-hand combat, gaining prestige in the fighter circle, helping people around the Mandalorians around the camp in order to gain prestige so that Mandalore will take you to Onderon. So it feels like all the purpose behind this episode was to set up that prestige hierarchy, so that it's going to be a confrontation between who has more prestige, Din or Bo-Katan. So I look forward to seeing more about that sort of stuff, but definitely check out that part of the game. If you haven't played the game, then definitely play it. If you haven't, then check out videos on YouTube. As a personal bit of reference, I do have gameplay videos up on the YouTube channel. Look for the Knights of the Old Republic 2 playlist, and you'll see about halfway through the various gameplays for Duxon, and that'll tell you everything you need to know about that. So with that being said, I also had a chance to watch Star Wars The Bad Batch Season 2, Episode 14. This was another story building episode where it looks like Rex and Echo are going to try and recruit the Bad Batch to go to potentially the Death Star to get those plans, find out what the Empire is building, and maybe not even get to the Death Star, but at least find out that that's what the Empire is building, so that they can relay it over to the Rebellion and use that as the foundation for that, or even have a Rogue One tie-in to have the Bad Batch find Scarif, talk to Galen Erso, and have him release the plans to Bodhi. So kind of have a time jump in there, but at the very least, set up something like that so that it gives a reason for why maybe the Bad Batch isn't mentioned later, or maybe they're killed in action because when they try to escape or something like that from the facility. But it just feels like they're setting that up as that kind of connection for the Rebellion. And I don't know that there was maybe a second part to that, but I guess the second part is really the Rebellion, that it sounds like they're starting to set up stuff like that for the Rebellion with the moles in the Empire, Rex and Echo trying to build up these communities and that sort of stuff. But I did want to go back for the Mandalorian, that we did find out how Grogu was able to be rescued and escape from the Jedi Temple and the Jedi Purge, and we have a cameo by Ahmed Best, who played Jar Jar Binks in The Phantom Menace, as a dual lightsaber wielding Jedi, which I actually enjoyed this scene a lot more than the dual lightsaber scene we saw in Attack of the Clones, because we actually see him having a useful combat against the stormtroopers that made it interesting to have dual wielding lightsabers like we're able to do in games like Knights of the Old Republic. So what Anakin did was fine against Count Dooku. It kind of served its purpose, but without reading the novelization, it kind of loses its impact. So it was kind of one of those things where you hope that we would have seen a longer battle, more fighting, less of Anakin hitting the power cable to knock out the lights, and more fighting with Count Dooku. Granted, it was probably more of a thing of its time, but I'm glad that we're finally able to see it hashed out now against the backdrop of lights on Coruscant, and a Jedi fighting a stormtrooper, deflecting blaster bolts with two lightsabers in proper action sort of stuff, to the point where I do want to rewatch that. So with that being said, for this week's game review, I wanted to give a progress update on my gameplay of GoldenEye 007 from 1997. I've been playing it on the Xbox Game Pass for Android, and overall I want to say that the game lives up to the hype of how good of a game it is. The one thing that doesn't stand out is the graphics. It is definitely a thing of its time, but if you think of the Max Payne 1 graphics and tone it down, that's kind of what you get here. But what they did as a game for N64 is actually really, really good as far as story, gameplay mechanics, weapons to use, following the general overarching plot of the film. So much of what you see in the film is translated into the game, where you can do things like visit the nuclear silo with the spaceship, you drive a tank around town. The final level is on the actual satellite, like the fight that you have, that Bond and Alex Trevelyan have. You have a level on the train as well, where you have to go down and rescue Natalia. So, and then even like the introductory sequence on the dam is there. So overall, when you're playing the game, it's as if you're in the movie, but with really, really bad graphics. So if you've never played it like I did up until now, then I definitely recommend it. The one thing that's kind of bugging me is the difficulty setting. So most of the game up until the train level is actually pretty straightforward, manageable. Not easy, but not difficult. But once you get to the train level and you have to use the laser to open up the door to escape, that's kind of where the game flips and gets really, really hard. Because by the time, so when you get into the next level in the jungle, that thing is a real pain. At least it was for me to get through. So I could get to the point of defeating Xenia on the top, but then the cave sequence was real hassle. Those auto turrets were difficult, and that wasn't even the least of the problem. So once you finish that level, the next level control is even harder, because you have to protect Natalia from these ongoing onslaught of bad guys and henchmen, to the point where I'm actually stuck in the game on that level. So that's why I kind of put a pause on the game, thinking that I might just be tired and I need to give it a break, where I might be pushing too hard to get through the level. But the level design is actually really good. I like that premise that you have to navigate this underground bunker to stop the GoldenEye satellite, turn it off, and you have to protect Natalia, but the execution is kind of unevenly balanced, which is why I kind of don't like these later levels, is that they went from 0 to 60 in difficulty really, really quickly. So I'm not sure how people did it right off the bat. It might be a control thing. It might have taken people a long time to do it. A lot of the gameplay videos don't necessarily do it justice, because you have people who seem to have things like auto aim on, or have maybe speed run on, or something like that. But for me, as an amateur video game player, it is a hassle, and I'm kind of stuck there. So I'm going to keep trying and get through it, like Jungle, where that did give me a bunch of trouble to defeat, but I was finally able to get through it. So I'm kind of hoping I'm able to do that here as well, once I can find a good path to defeat all those henchmen. So with that being said, I'm going to round out this particular episode with an Android launcher review. So if you're like me, you want a minimalist home screen where you don't have too much going on, you don't use too many widgets, you just want quick access to some of your apps. So there's a launcher in the Play Store for free called O Launcher that kind of just lists your top 7 or 8 apps. You can swipe for additional apps if you want, and that's it. But let's say you want a widgets page, or you want, weather and things like that as well, then check out the newly released alpha version of the app called Pro Launcher, which adds those things I mentioned and is in current development as far as adding some extra features over what O Launcher provides. So if you don't use any of those things and just want access to your apps, then O Launcher is the way to go. But if you want a clean home screen and then a swipe page for all your widgets, then definitely check out Pro Launcher, because it allows you to keep your home screen organized. It's just 2 pages, one for your app shortcuts, one for your widgets, and then you can swipe up to search for any apps that you don't have on your home screen. So very, very straightforward app. I think I reviewed O Launcher a while back. It might be on the YouTube channel. I don't remember offhand. But the reason I recommend O Launcher and Pro Launcher is that it allows you to get to the apps you use quickly, so you're not looking at sorting through a whole bunch of apps on your home screen across multiple pages and widgets and things like that. You have everything cleanly organized and easy to get to. So definitely look up O Launcher and Pro Launcher in the Google Play Store. Unfortunately, no iOS version because of how iOS does their thing. But if you're on Android and want a clean home screen, definitely check them out and see if it's something you like. I recommend them if you want to clean up your home screen and just have access to what you need. I'll have links in the show note to both of those launchers, so you have the ones I want to talk about, or you can quickly get to the ones I'm talking about. But in general, I'm recommending that as a launcher over just your regular everyday launchers, like whatever comes on your stock phone, like with Samsung or Google or OnePlus, and even recommending it over Nova Launcher, because the launchers like Nova Launcher kind of mimic what other launchers do, like the one with Samsung and OnePlus, but give you more options. This goes in the reverse direction and actually gives you fewer options to make your home screen stay as neat and organized as possible. So that's all there is for this particular review. So if you have any questions, comments, feedback on my reviews, want to provide your own feedback or suggestions for things to review, links to the social media networks that I'm on can be found on the website at HeadphonesNeil.reviews, with access to past episodes, subscription links, and all of that good stuff. Again, that's HeadphonesNeil.reviews. But thanks for tuning into this particular episode, and until next time.